Dismissive avoidants are often so hard to read, but what happens when they realize not just that they've hurt you, but they finally realize that you've actually moved on? How do they process things? Do they regret their behaviors? Does it make them reconsider how they showed up in the relationship? I am going to break this down for you today so that you are not left wondering and so that you can make sure you are moving on with your life, honoring yourself, your feelings, your needs, and take the crucial lessons about why you chose what you chose away from this relationship for the future as well. First and foremost, okay, I think this is really important to pay attention to. Oftentimes, a dismissive avoidant hurts somebody in a relationship and then acts like nothing ever happened because they literally have no idea that they hurt somebody. Let me explain. A dismissive avoidant in a relationship, they tend to be hurt more by words rather than actions. But both fearful avoidant attachment styles and anxious attachment styles are frequently very much hurt by actions or inactions rather than words. For example, if you tell a dismissive avoidant they did something wrong or you're critical of them, that's very deeply wounding for them because it triggers off this deep core wound. I am defective or I am shameful. And of course, they'll bring that into their relationships as a result. And when that triggers them, they tend to retreat. But dismissive avoidants don't frequently get hurt by actions or inaction. So for example, if you have a fearful avoidant or anxious attachment style that forgets to call their DA partner back after saying, oh yeah, I'll call you back in an hour, and they forget until the next day, usually it's very unlikely for a dismissive avoidant to be hurt in that type of scenario. In fact, they may even feel some degree of relief. Oh, I don't have to talk on the phone this evening. So dismissive avoidants, because they don't often get hurt from actions or inactions, they don't realize that their inactions are hurting other people because we all as human beings tend to project from our perception, which means we tend to think that people need what we would need or would get hurt by what we would get hurt by. But if something wouldn't hurt us, we don't often realize it would actually hurt or affect somebody else. And so in this particular dynamic, this is the most common of three reasons. The second reason a dismissive avoidant may hurt you and then act like nothing happened is because they are deeply afraid of conflict. And when I say afraid of conflict, I don't mean that they're like quaking in their boots. I don't mean that they're sitting there like, oh no, a conflict. They don't necessarily feel emotionally unsafe, but they absolutely experience a deep sense of learned helplessness in a conflict. They become afraid of saying the wrong thing. They become afraid of their own capacity to show up and handle the conflict or navigate it in a healthy way. And so they kind of just go into this freeze mode around the potential for a conflict, which often just feels like you are being stonewalled or iced out. Now, is it possible that a dismissive avoidant can stonewall you to punish you and to ice you out on purpose? Of course, it is possible. But generally, dismissive avoidants aren't really vindictive. They're not usually like, oh, let me make somebody feel bad over here because they're making me feel bad. Of course, human beings can do that of any attachment style, but generally dismissive avoidants are the least like that. However, they can be very lacking sometimes in the awareness that their actions or behaviors are having such a big impact on somebody else. Okay, so that's stonewalling. They might be like, oh, it's not a big deal. I just really need space. But they may not realize that that's leaving somebody really hanging, or that person's feeling really anxious with all of the uncertainty that's happening after a conflict. So that's really number two. Number three reason dismissive avoidant may hurt you and then literally act like nothing happened is because they don't know how to address their part. Now, I think this is a really important sticking point in a relationship, honestly, because I am a huge believer that in secure relationships, one of the core 6 pillars that we talk about from integrated attachment theory, which is the science and psychology of how to leverage basically neuroscience to rewire your attachment style and become secure. One of the 6 main pillars is you have to be able to communicate through conflict. You have to learn to get good at conflict communication. It's something securely attached people do very well, and it is something that's basically a necessity to become an earned, secure person in a relationship. When we take a look at that more deeply, right, if you want to watch other videos on this channel about the 6 pillars of becoming securely attached, to rewire your attachment style, but when we look at this, it is a big deal if somebody's completely avoiding a conflict because they just don't want to have one, or they're completely avoiding communicating about something because they're scared to have to take ownership. Maybe they make that mean that like, oh my gosh, if I own it, then I'm really shameful or defective, or then I have to like show, that I made a mistake and it's really vulnerable. Like those things can be there, but honestly, those should be things that every attachment style is vetting for in a partner, because truly there are a lot of great dismissive avoidants who show up and do the work and show up and thrive in relationships. But if somebody's not doing the work and they can't be accountable to have a difficult conversation, That's definitely going to bleed into the overall longevity and health of a relationship. So, what do you do if you are an anxious attachment style or a fearful avoidant and you feel hurt by a dismissive avoidant? Well, let's start with anxious. If you're an anxious attachment style and you feel hurt, like this person hurt you and they're not even acknowledging or talking about it, I know that for you, it feels really scary to bring something up and to take up space. I know that it's really difficult to be like, hey, you hurt me and that's not okay. But I promise you, if you self-silence and you try to hold it in and you don't speak up for yourself, it is going to come out as anxiety and clinginess later on. Why? Because if you pretend like, okay, it's fine that you hurt me, let's just get back onto a good track because I don't want to be abandoned or I don't want something negative to come between us. When you stuff that down and you don't resolve it, that stores in your subconscious mind is like, okay, I don't know if this person cares about me. I don't know if they realize they're hurting me. Why didn't they acknowledge that they're hurting me? That leaves you with a lot of uncertainty, a sense of invalidation, and a total lack of reassurance about how much this person cares. And as soon as you store it and stuff it down without resolving it or talking it through, it is going to come out in your relationship in another way. And usually there's a bit of a boomerang effect there. Usually a few days or even weeks later, you find yourself clinging even more, needing even more reassurance because there was this lack of resolution when you self-silenced about what was affecting you. And so what you would want to do in that scenario instead is actually have a conversation that may say something like, hey, I know we sort of have this conflict or this tension between us, and I know that's not fun for either of us. I would love to see what's going on from your end of the situation so I can be there for you and see what you need to feel better. And I know in my situation, I would love for you to acknowledge that, hey, I just need a little bit of ABC. And if you can say what ABC is, so maybe ABC is, I just need to know that you care. I just need a little bit of reassurance in this situation, and I need you to empathize with how this might affect me, right? So you specifically say what you need in that space. That gives room for the dismissive avoidant to show up. Now, if they don't show up perfectly in that scenario, and I'll talk about the fearful avoidant in just a second too, but if they don't meet your needs, try just being more specific as to what you need. So say reassurance for me looks like, I just need you to say that you care about me, that you're here for me, and that you'll be mindful about how this can hurt me in the future. And that's literally all I need you to say and recognize, and I know I'll feel better. If you can be really clear and specific as to what your need looks like, I want you to imagine that you're painting a picture of what that need looks like. Now you literally handed it to this person to be there for resolution, and this is where dismissive avoidants thrive. If they have harmonious communication where it's not an attack, it's not critical, and it's very literal and straightforward, the vast majority of the time dismissive avoidants show up for this. If they don't, and no matter how much you communicate and try this, they just never show up. They never care for your needs. They never make an acknowledgement. They never take a step forward. Okay, well then whoever it would be of any attachment style, you're probably in the wrong relationship because that person's never going to grow. But that is something you want to practice because that will go a long way. If you want some help and support with this, knowing your feelings and needs is something that will literally get the ball rolling. And we have a fully free needs course. You actually get to keep it for life. Use the link in the description box below. We're just doing this for a portion of the month, like a very small period of the month. Go click on that needs link. And when you join the 7-day free trial, you actually get to keep the needs course for life. And if you cancel before day 7, you'll still get the free course for life. So if the link is still here, we probably still have the promotion going on. Don't be afraid to click down below and check it out. If you're a fearful avoidant attachment style and you've been hurt in this particular dynamic, one of the probably first compulsions or reactions that you're going to want to take is you may feel this need to kind of react, right? Fearful avoidants often feel hurt by something, and when they feel hurt, they often have this cover emotion of anger. They get hurt, then they get angry, and sometimes they become like a volcano erupting, can be harsh and critical with their words, or they spitefully retreat. So they're like, fine, you don't care about me, I'm gonna ice you out. And dismissive avoidants, they ice people out more pervasively, but fearful avoidants, they can ice out a dismissive avoidant more intensely, okay? So they can just be like so like cold, shut down, like ice cold. Whereas dismissive avoidants kind of just walk around the world with their walls up. In this particular case, if you feel this need to react, okay, and you feel this need to like, you get really triggered, I want you to practice this first. It's called somatic processing. It is a way of processing your emotions so they don't own you. And what I mean by this is that oftentimes when we have this intense emotional reaction, it basically takes us over. Like you can seriously think of like those scary movies where they get like people get possessed by like a demon or whatever. your emotions like take you over like in those scary movies in a way. Obviously, that's a really intense example, but if you imagine like you kind of get really emotional and maybe you get angry or upset or hurt or whatever it might be, and then after you kind of like come out of it, you're like, whoa, why did I react like that? And that can frequently happen for a fearful avoidant. So that's a sign that your emotions are taking you over. But here's something really interesting. You can't witness something, AKA be fully present with it and be consumed by it at the exact same time. You can't be possessed by something and witness it simultaneously. It's not possible because when you're possessed by something like an emotion, you are it. It's taken you over. When you witness something, there's a sense of separation from it. So the example you can think of is like, if I can see this pen, I am not the pen. I am separate from the pen. And if I'm witnessing the pen and looking at it and being fully present with it, I have space from it. It kind of healthily detaches me from it. Now, there's a research study done with a whole bunch of participants, and basically the researchers put participants into these fMRI scanners and they had them recall really triggering experiences, like things that made them angry or hurt. And what they did is they watched the brain activity of these individuals, and they found that when people are really triggered, a lot of the brain activity went out of the prefrontal cortex and neocortex regions of the brain, which is kind of our more logical thinking self, and went into their reptilian brain. They're very like fight or flight kind of primitive self, right? What ended up happening is then when researchers had participants just witness and label their emotions. So for example, be able to notice emotions in their body and say things like, I am angry. And angry feels like heat in my arms and coldness, across my chest and a tensing in my jaw. When they were able to somatically, so somatic just means of the body, when they were able to notice what they were feeling in their body and label the sensations and the emotion, all of a sudden it lit brain activity back up in the prefrontal and neocortex regions of the brain. And they were able to establish these more like higher levels of thought, think things through a little bit more effectively and sort of connect back to that higher version of oneself. Now, why I'm telling you this is it is very common for fearful avoidants to get taken over by things. And when you feel hurt by somebody, sometimes you want to just push them back or you feel like you need to hyper defend yourself sometimes. But the reality is when you're acting through your emotions instead of being able to witness your emotions, you're also not fully present in what you truly need. You're fully present in what you need from your reptilian brain, okay? It's like saying if you're really triggered by your boss, you might be like, I need to break everything in my boss's office. You might say that when somebody asks you what you need, instead of like, you get space from your emotions, you feel like your emotions are quelled, you process them for a minute, and then you can respond like, oh, I need to set a boundary with my boss so they stop dumping work on my plate at the last minute, whatever it might be. We need to regulate ourselves before going in and talking about what we need. And that is such an important part of healing your fearful avoidant attachment style. So in this particular case, I want you to practice noticing when emotion rises up, just labeling the emotion and then labeling one or two sensations. And this is you for the first time being fully present with your emotions, because a lot of times what we do is we get triggered by something as people, right? And then you try to numb or dissociate from your emotions by like drinking or watching television or, playing video games or binging on social media, whatever it might be, eating food. You're trying to numb and retreat from your emotions. That is different than somatic processing, which allows you to, in a mindfulness sort of way, be fully present in your own body. And when we do that, and when we can sit with those sensations for at least a minute or two, you'll feel them start to die down. You may feel at first like they're strong, but emotions are just sensations in the body. That's all that they are. They're a reflection of your mind in your body. And as soon as you can just be present with that, you'll start to feel this like release of the emotions. It's called somatic processing. And there's other ways you can do this and more in-depth things we can add to this, but then that will allow you to be more regulated. And then you can leapfrog off of what we talked about with the anxious attachment style, which is to then practice communicating what you need. Okay, hey, this hurt me. Here's how it hurt me. Here's what I'm needing going forward. And you can paint a specific picture of what that looks like. But you'll be much better off regulating your emotions first to then be able to have the most highly constructive conversation so your needs can truly be heard and received and thus be met. So that's it for today. I hope this makes a whole lot of sense. Let me know any questions you have in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And I can't wait to see you in tomorrow's video. Thanks for watching.